Some of you seemed really excited with the last one, so here's part 2. Welcome back everyone to another Five Nights at Freddy's theory, and today we continue with part 2 of our steel wool only timeline. Now if you somehow missed part 1 or you just want to rewatch part 1 before watching part 2, save this video for later and then click the first link down in the description below, or click the card that should be popping up above my head. Now I do go over why I'm making a timeline using just the steel wool games in my previous video, but I do want to recap it here real quick. Besides just giving myself the challenge of using just these 3 games in order to make the most cohesive timeline I can, 10 years of lore is a lot to comb through, and because of that, a lot of the lore seems to step on itself. Take FNAF 4 for example. When FNAF 4 first came out, we all thought this was just some sort of nightmare happening in the Crown Child's head as he was dying. And then Sister Location came out, and that kind of threw a wrench in things because there's cameras watching the Crying Child's room. Well, yeah, it could have been William Afton watching his kid while he's at work because his kid isn't well. Yeah, that makes sense, right? And then the Silver Eyes trilogy came out, and when that came out, that made us think, oh, maybe the nightmare animatronics aren't actually nightmares. They're using these weird illusion disc things to make themselves look creepier than they actually are. And now Didophobia just came out recently, and that's changing it again. They're no longer using illusion discs, they're using nightmare gas. It's all just stepping on one another. Not to mention that with each day that passes, we lose more lore from our franchise. Scott used to use his old website, scottgames.com, in order to give us some lore, but some of that lore never made it to the games. So if you weren't around whenever he posted it online and you don't know where to look for it now, or even what to look for, you don't know what that lore is. And this isn't an issue that's limited to the Scott Games lore dumps. FNAF AR recently got deleted, and with it, all the lore that was associated with it, meaning that future theorists are going to have a lot harder time trying to get any lore from this game. So I want to make this timeline for a couple of reasons. A, steel wool games are some of the most easy to access games for any newcomer to the franchise. B, Help Wanted 1 serves as a sort of soft reboot to the franchise. And C, is steel wool trying to change the timeline, or are they changing it without even realizing it? Now in our last video, we went over the events of our timeline that recap Scott's games through steel wool's games. And through this, we find out that steel wool isn't giving us a lot of the information that Scott's games originally gave us. For example, in the original games, we used these mini-games in order to figure out a lot of the lore, like the missing children's incident, or who's in Springtrap, or the bite of 87. Sorry, that was actually the bite of 83. But in this new steel wool era of games, we haven't gotten a lot of this information. The Crying Child isn't a character in these games because his mini-games didn't make their way to the steel wool era yet. William Afton isn't a named character in these games, and we don't even know that he was the one who killed these kids. And finally, the missing children's incident only gets a few references in these games. Now last time, I did get that last point wrong. In my last video, I said that there was only one reference to the missing children's incident, and that reference didn't give us enough information to concretely put the missing children's incident on this timeline here. And that reference was the tombstones that we find in Help Wanted 2. But you guys pointed out that there were actually 2 other references that I missed. Now this first reference, I'm a little embarrassed to say that I missed. In Help Wanted 1, when you're getting one of the endings, Glitchtrap lures you to the backstage where he then presumably stuffs you into the Freddy animatronic. The second reference we get is one of the messages we receive in the security breach duffel bags. It reads, "Why did you reopen? Everyone remembers what happened to those kids." Now that must mean that we have enough information now to put the missing children's incident on our timeline, right? Not necessarily. You see, using these 3 pieces of evidence does give us a clearer picture of what happened, but there are other pieces of evidence on this timeline that I think changed this missing children's incident. Now I say this missing children's incident because the one that I'm going to make for this timeline is going to differ drastically from the one that we've been talking about for the last 10 years. Because why make it easy for myself? First things first, the number of gravestones we see. In Help Wanted 2, we see 6 gravestones, and each gravestone has a poppet beside them, and each poppet has a different animatronic mask on them. There's Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, the puppet, and Golden Freddy. Now, in the original games, we only got a missing children's incident of 5 kids. But this seems to show us that this missing children's incident has 6. Second, the original games tell us that the kids go missing in very quick succession, but they're a little contradictory to one another. In FNAF 1, they say that 2 kids go missing one day and 3 kids go missing on another day, while in FNAF 2, Foxy Go 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 shows us that all 5 kids are under one roof whenever it happens. But in the Steel Wool games, they don't specify when it happens. The last point that I want to bring up is that this timeline right here, like many others, has multiple Freddy's locations on it. And not just multiple Freddy's locations, multiple Freddy's opening and closing. And we don't always get a reason as to why they close. Now, all these points together make me realize that the missing children's incident does take place on this timeline, but it doesn't take place on one concrete point. It takes place over the course of years, decades even. Let's take another look at the timeline real quick, and I'll show you what I mean. So, our 3 evidence pieces are each giving us an important detail as to the incidences occurring on this timeline. 1. They occur to kids, which is old lore. 2. Some of the kids get stuffed into animatronics, and that's where the bodies are hidden. Again, that's pretty old lore. Somebody can look that up pretty easily. And 3, most importantly, we get the order of deaths from the tombstones in Help Wanted 2. The order going Chica, Bonnie, Freddy, Foxy, Golden Freddy, and the puppet. Now, real quickly, I don't exactly think that we're going to be able to say a human child gets stuffed into each of these animatronics, with the puppet being on this list. The puppet's design is just way too skinny to actually fit a human body inside, even if that human body is child-sized. Furthermore, I don't exactly think that we're going to be able to say that a kid dies with each of these incidences. Sure, these are tombstones that we see in Help Wanted 2, but the security breach message is left vague for a reason. I don't think every kid dies here. Yes, they do eventually die because we see 6 tombstones, but I don't think they die initially. Now, with this specific order of animatronics that we're working with, that means that all the events that we're going to be talking about need to occur before the closing of the FNAF 2 location. Why? Because if the puppet is the last one on the list, the FNAF 2 location is the only time we actually see the puppet. Now, with the last event needing to occur before the closing of the FNAF 2 location, this is where I think each event needs to occur on our timeline. And don't worry, I'll go more in depth on each event later. We're going to start with Chica at Fredbear's Family Diner, and then move over to Bonnie in 1970 of Fall Fest. We then move over to Freddy at his very first location, and then we see Foxy's event at Fall Fest of 83. After Foxy is Golden Freddy's event halfway through the week of FNAF 2, and we ended off with the Puppets event at the end of the week of FNAF 2. Now, why exactly do I think that Chica's event needs to occur at Fredbear's Family Diner? I mean, we get no evidence that Chica exists at the diner. And you'd be correct. The only evidence that we get of animatronics being at the diner is Spring Bonnie and Fredbear. So why do I think Chica goes here? Well, I think at this point, the diner wants to start expanding their character roster so they could be more marketable. At this point, we only know that they have Spring Bonnie and Fredbear, and adding a third character means that they add a third set of toys that the kids can buy. So what, I think that the diner just started making new animatronics because, hey, it's going to help my theory, right? Well, yes, of course it's going to help my theory, but it's not the only piece of evidence that's pointing towards Chica being the first animatronic after the original 2. Now, do you guys remember the Fredbear and Friends cartoons? You know, the ones that are shown in that mysterious room in Security Breach and also were shown during the lead up to Security Breach's release? Well, what 3 characters do we start out with in that series? Bonnie, Chica, and Freddy. And then the only one who joins the team later is Foxy, meaning that Chica was the 3rd addition to the animatronic line and Foxy joined even later. Now, this led me to believe that Chica was added to the roster of characters before Fazbear Entertainment got a hold of the Freddy's crew, meaning that Chica was made during the diner era. Now, obviously, if an incident occurs with one of your brand new state-of-the-art animatronics, your company's going to be under hot water, whether or not that kid dies. So at this point, I think Fredbear's Family Diner is trying to clear their name by bringing their other animatronics to Fall Fest of 1970, where another incident occurs, this time with one of their star animatronics, Bonnie. With a second incident occurring so close to the first one, Fredbear's Family Diner is forced to shut down. But before that, they sell the rights to all their characters to Fazbear Entertainment, who then create Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria in 1983. Now, why do I think that Freddy has to be the first incident at his own location? Well, I think it's because of this poster that we could find at Help Wanted. Now, anytime I try and look for it, it's very blurry because you can only see it on cameras, so I think I'm just going to grab the one from the original games. But one of the rules on this poster is don't touch Freddy. I mean, why would Fazbear Entertainment want to make this rule? I mean, he's the star of the show. The guy literally has a squeaky nose. Yeah, I mean, like, he's literally asking to be touched, and yet the only rule is to not touch Freddy. Not don't touch the animatronics, it's don't touch Freddy. And let's not forget that the parts and service minigame that you play in Help Wanted, you know, the one where you literally try and fix Freddy, has you removing kids' belongings from his body. You start by removing the hat from his mouth, which could be some sort of bite reference right there. You also try and remove his watch from his body, and there's a freaking shoe in there. Why is there a shoe? Did some kid try and throw it down Freddy's mouth thinking it'd be funny, and then they left the pizzeria without a shoe? What parent is letting that happen to their child? So after Freddy's incident, we now have Foxy's incident, and I put Foxy's incident at Fall Fest of 1983 because of the game that you play in Curse of Dreadbear, where you're trying to run away from Foxy in this weird cornfield sort of thing. And that's not the only time that we see this weird Foxy corn maze thing. We also see it in Princess Quest, which leads me to believe that this has some sort of significance to the lore that we just don't know about yet. Now, this incident is the reason why Foxy's design change is so drastic between the withered and toy versions of himself. The withered version is associated with whatever this incident is. He's not safe anymore. So they rebranded Foxy to be this nice, lovable character. Now that leaves us with just two animatronics left, Golden Freddy and the puppet. Now, like I said last time, I think Golden Freddy is responsible for the bite of 87. But last time I said it happens halfway through the week. I think that needs to be changed now because of the phone calls that we receive from Phone Guy. You see, night 6 is whenever the building gets shut down, and night 4 is whenever the investigation starts around the building. But Phone Guy only mentions the rumors on night 3, and the way that he says it kind of implies that the rumors have been spreading for at least a few days now. Now, initially, I just wanted to say that all the rumors that Phone Guy was talking about are just from the incident that happened at the previous Freddy's location. I mean, it would make sense if customers are still a little hasty to go to a Freddy's location after an incident that happened at the previous location, right? But then I realized that it's all connected. The rumors from earlier in the week are from an incident that happened the week before. The investigation starts because the rumors are happening, and the investigation ends with somebody finding out that something actually happened involving a yellow suit. But even after the investigation closes and everyone knows what the incident was, Phone Guy still thinks that the building's gonna reopen later, which makes me think that the incident wasn't bad enough to actually close the building just yet. You see, Phone Guy makes it sound like that they might reopen the FNAF 2 location even after this incident blows over. But it doesn't reopen. The next game we have is FNAF 1, leading me to believe that another incident needed to occur to actually put the FNAF 2 location in the ground. Now, Phone Guy tells us in FNAF 1 that the bite of 87 victim doesn't die from the bite, which makes me think that because they don't die, the incident wasn't bad enough for Fazbear Entertainment to need to close the building yet. In comes the puppet. You see, Phone Guy tells us in the night 6 call that we need to take the next day shift position before the Freddy's location closes, and this is where the incident is going to occur. And the ironic thing about this incident is that if we would have listened to Phone Guy, it would have never occurred. You see, Phone Guy tells us 3 things about the puppet. 1, it's always thinking, and that's why it's so creepy to him. 2, keep winding the music box. It keeps the puppet at bay. 3, the puppet can go anywhere. But on night 6, Phone Guy tells us to stay close to the animatronics to make sure that they don't get into any trouble. But the thing is, if we're close to the animatronics, we're not at our desk. And if we're not at our desk, we can't wind the music box, which means the puppet got free on our watch. Now we get into our actual last incident. Yeah, I lied to you. There's not actually 6 incidences. I know I said that there are 6 back here. There's actually 7. You want to know why? Because these tombstones right here are marked 1 through 6. And after you light all 6, you hop into this elevator. This elevator that is Circus Baby themed. why are you hopping into an elevator in a Princess Quest game, first of all? Second of all, why is it Circus Baby themed? It's because Circus Baby is the 7th victim in our timeline. Now, after I fixed the mistake that I made last time and accidentally making the missing children's incident much more complicated than it needed to be, it's time to talk about our gap in the timeline. Now, this gap in the timeline was supposed to represent that we know something is supposed to happen here. We're just not exactly sure what that something is supposed to be. You see, we get brand new animatronics in Help Wanted 2, from Pig Patch to Lefty to Scrap Baby, but we don't really get any explanation as to where they come from and why they're there. Now, in a normal timeline, this is where Pizzeria Simulator and Ultimate Custom Night would go, but because we don't have those games in this timeline, we can't exactly completely fill out this gap. Now, after playing Help Wanted 2 myself, I did find one key detail that can help us fill out this gap, and it's the band-aids that you could put on Helpy in the first aid minigames.
Are these the rock stars?
You see, rather than making the band-aids this bland tan color that's supposed to look like skin color, Steelwool decided to put designs on these band-aids, and the designs are of animatronics that we haven't seen yet. Now, unlike all the other animatronics that I said we got in Help Wanted 2, these animatronics are of the original 4, just in a different style than we've ever seen. Now, with the original 4 animatronics shown in this new design on these band-aids, and the other new animatronics that we see in this same minigame, this leads me to believe that Fazbear made another location in this gap in the timeline. Now, when I put this location on the timeline, I'm going to call it FNAF 6. But that doesn't mean that we're going to be able to take all the information that we originally got from FNAF 6. For instance, we don't hear about the FNAF 6 fire. We don't hear about Henry Emily at all. We don't even hear about Scrap Trap. And even though Lefty is in the Help Wanted 2 game, we don't know that the puppet is in Lefty. So we're not going to be able to get all that information. The only information that we get to be able to put on this timeline is that the location existed.
What are you even doing back there?
Now, just saying that all these new animatronics in the first aid minigame are just new animatronics works for Pig Patch and Lefty, but it doesn't exactly work for Scrap Baby. I mean, would you put this in front of children? You see, Scrap Baby seems to be very strange in the Steelwool games. In Scott's games, Circus Baby and the rest of the Fun Times combined in order to make Ennard, and then Ennard hops into Michael Afton's body in order to make it out of the sister location bunker. Later, Circus Baby gets kicked out of Ennard, and the rest of the Fun Times create Molten Freddy, while Circus Baby has to make herself into Scrap Baby. Now, I see a few problems happening when we try and add this information to our timeline here. Number 1, Circus Baby and the Funtime animatronics are never seen trying to combine into Ennard. We do see Ennard in these games. He's in all 3 games. We just never see these animatronics trying to combine into Ennard. And it could be argued that yes, Ennard is these animatronics combined into one because of the multiple sets of eyes found across his body, but it could also be argued that this is some weird prototype animatronic that we've just never seen before. Number 2, if these animatronics did combine into one, there's no evidence that shows that Circus Baby splits off from Ennard in order to make Scrap Baby. And the weirdest point of all, number 3, the Blob. The Blob contains Circus Baby's original mask, which is weird because if Ennard is the way that the animatronics escaped the bunker, they didn't use any of the casings when escaping. They only used the endoskeleton. So all of that just to say that the design changes between Circus Baby and Scrap Baby in these games has no explanation to them in the Steelwool games. Now, we can't even say that these are 2 completely different animatronics either, because any of the minigames that involve the Circus Baby dolls involve the Circus Baby doll and the Scrap Baby dolls, meaning that these have to be the same animatronic. Well, alright, I think I've definitely talked about this stupid gap in my timeline long enough. I think it's about time that I go update this real quick and we start talking about the events in the Steelwool games. Now that we removed the gap in our timeline, it's time to move on to the story that Steelwool is trying to tell us, starting off with our indie game developer. Now, one of the very first things that Steelwool tells us in their games is how a rogue indie game developer decided to make horror games based off of the rumors surrounding Fazbear Entertainment, and those games hurt Fazbear's reputation. Now, hang on a second. Did I just hear that right? Did Fazbear Entertainment just say that the events portrayed in these games right here aren't accurate to what really happened, meaning that all of this was for nothing? What the hell am I doing here then? Actually, it seems more like Fazbear Entertainment was lying to us at the beginning of the game. When we start playing Help Wanted, we could find these tapes hidden across the game, and they're warnings from Tape Girl. When we listen to one of them in particular, Tape Girl gives us a warning that Fazbear Entertainment lied about the indie game developer. He didn't go rogue, he was hired by Fazbear Entertainment to make light of the situations from Fazbear Entertainment's past. Okay, good, so that means that I don't have to erase half of my work up here. So after the indie game developer was hired, he then starts working on those games to cover up Fazbear Entertainment's past. After the indie game developer released the games to the public, Fazbear Entertainment went into stage 2 of their plan to make it seem like that all the events happening in these games were completely fabricated. So they start development on Help Wanted 1, which is to make fun of all the indie game developers' games. Now, developing Help Wanted isn't very smooth in the Fazbear universe. After Help Wanted begins developing, a new team is then hired soon after to replace the old team because either the old team went over budget and over time, or they found something that they weren't meant to find. Now this introduces us to what I'm going to call the B team, because they came second. And the B team includes 2 new developers that we kind of get acquainted with across Help Wanted, Tape Girl and the first named character in this timeline, Jeremy. Now, Tape Girl gives us a lot of important information about the development of Help Wanted, but not all of it's going to be completely relevant at this exact second. So, to make sure that I don't forget to talk about it later, I'm going to write a list of the things that I want to talk about in this gap right here. The first thing that I want to remind myself to talk about later is Jeremy. Jeremy is a very important character in the Steel Wool games. Not only is he the first named character that we get, he is also Team B's quality assurance guy, meaning he's the one testing the Help Wanted game before it gets released to the public. Now hang on a second, is it Tape Girl the one who's testing these games? She's the one who's leaving the tapes behind for us. Well, yes, Tape Girl does eventually become the tester for Help Wanted after Jeremy, because something happens to Jeremy. You see, while playtesting the game, Jeremy doesn't find a bug like he normally does. No, this time he finds something much worse. He finds a virus, or as their team likes to call, the anomaly. But this anomaly has some special side effect for anyone playing the game. The anomaly can get inside your head and make you do things that you wouldn't normally want to do. How did this anomaly even make it into the game? Well, you see, that leads me into the second thing that I want to put on this list to talk about later. The anomaly made it into the game because of motherboards. You see, Fazbear Entertainment loves saving money anywhere they can. And the one way that they did it with this game is by sending over a huge box of motherboards for the team to scan into the game, because they thought it would save a lot of time and a lot of money on the development side. Now, to be fair, Fazbear Entertainment was correct with that statement. Scanning in these motherboards did exponentiate the development process. Now, how did that work exactly? Well, apparently, these motherboards came from the original animatronics. So rather than having to code each animatronic to move the exact same way that the old animatronics did, they just took the old movement algorithms from these motherboards and scanned it into the games. Now, it seems like that the only downside to scanning these motherboards was that something was attached to them that wasn't supposed to be there. The anomaly. Now, since the anomaly was scanned into the games, and Jeremy was the one playtesting the games at the time, the anomaly now had access to Jeremy and tried to use Jeremy to escape the game. Now that leads us into our next point here in our timeline. Jeremy gets controlled by the anomaly, and in the process, cuts his own face off. Listen, I know it's pretty disgusting, but it does serve a purpose. Jeremy literally wants to cut the connection between him and the anomaly. And it makes sense if there's literally a chip getting drilled into your head that makes you see the anomaly even outside of the VR world. Now, why is Jeremy seeing and hearing the anomaly even though he's not wearing a VR headset? And why is he getting a chip drilled into his head? Well, it's most likely that he's not wearing just any VR headset. He's most likely wearing the Vanny mask, which drills a chip into your head as we've seen in Ruin, so that you can see the AR world both with and without the mask on. So that means that Team B no longer has a playtester, so somebody on the team needs to step up and take Jeremy's role. In comes Tape Girl, who leaves us the lovely tapes that we listened to across Help Wanted, and I'm going to want to talk about her more later too. So Tape Girl takes up the role as the new playtester of the team and starts making tapes of her experience as a playtester. But in doing so, she accidentally gives the anomaly a way to hide whenever the team actually tries to remove it. You see, in order for Tape Girl to leave these tapes in the game, she needs to make a sort of pocket dimension right outside of the game's files. That way, whenever the game tries to do a purge and get rid of any anomalies, her tapes are left behind. But in doing so, she gives the anomaly a safe space in order to hide whenever that purge happens. So because Tape Girl wants to save these tapes in the game for future developers, she accidentally saves the anomaly, and the anomaly then takes control of her. Now, before Tape Girl gets completely taken over by the anomaly, she tells us that her team couldn't finish the project, meaning that the game gets moved over to another development team before getting released to the public. Now, it does seem like that Team C does manage to actually finish this game, or maybe it was a team that was after them, since we do have Help Wanted releasing to the public. Now, we know that after Help Wanted 1's release, the Pizzaplex begins construction. And we know this because when you make it to the end of the Pizza Party minigame, you could choose to go outside the exit door. And when you do this, you see Fazbear Entertainment advertising that they're building the Pizzaplex. Now, after the release of Help Wanted 1, we also get a Halloween update to Help Wanted 1. And after the Halloween update, the Pizzaplex opens. Yay! Now, let me introduce you guys to 4 new characters here. Yeah, that's right, there's 4 this time. You see, the Pizzaplex can't run without any employees, so let me introduce you to the 2 most important, Vanessa and Cassie's father. Now, Vanessa here is an underqualified night guard. No, seriously, it says that in one of her interview files. She was underqualified when they interviewed her, and she still got the head night guard position. Now, Cassie's father seems to be a Fazbear technician of some sorts. Now, why do I keep calling him Cassie's father instead of his real name? Well, we don't really know his real name. It's theorized to be Jeremy, but I'm just gonna call him Cassie's father to be on the safe side. Speaking of Cassie, that's who I need to introduce you to next. Now, Cassie seems to be a young girl who used to love the Pizzaplex while it was open. Now, hang on a second. Correct me if I'm wrong. I just told you guys that the Pizzaplex opens pretty recently. Why am I now saying that the Pizzaplex closes? Well, spoiler alert, the Pizzaplex closes. There is nothing different from this part of the timeline to this part of the timeline. The location's open for 2 weeks and then they just close. It's a miracle that this franchise has lasted as long as it has. Anyway, we seem to learn that Cassie befriends Gregory while she's playing at the Pizzaplex at some point. Well, who's Gregory? That's the last character that I'm going to introduce you guys to. Gregory seems to be another kid who loves the Pizzaplex, with one major difference. He has this weird case of amnesia when we start Security Breach. So now that I've introduced you to all the new characters in this part of the timeline, it's time to actually get back to the timeline. So after the Pizzaplex opens, of course, we need employees. So we know that Vanessa and Cassie's father get hired at the Pizzaplex. Vanessa gets hired as a night guard and Cassie's father as a technician. Now this is the point where I want to go back and start talking about the things that I left on this list, starting off with Tape Girl. I think Tape Girl's Vanessa. You see, even though Vanessa has no prior night guard experience, she still applies and gets the head night guard position at the Pizzaplex, which makes me think that Glitchtrap is already controlling her and trying to get her that head position, that way she can do whatever he wants her to do. But if Vanessa already had Glitchtrap in her head when she was getting hired at the Pizzaplex, and the ending in Help Wanted 2 where she's crushing Glitchtrap is her actually getting rid of Glitchtrap entirely, that must mean that Glitchtrap didn't make it to the full release of Help Wanted, meaning that Vanessa had to play a pre-release of Help Wanted. Now at this point, I think you can see where I'm going with this. Vanessa being Tape Girl means that she played the pre-release of Help Wanted and got Glitchtrap in her head. Now with Glitchtrap only being able to transfer 2 people during the pre-release, there's only a handful of people who've gotten the Glitchtrap virus, and most of them have removed the Glitchtrap virus over time. In Help Wanted 1, we get 3 characters who get taken over by the Glitchtrap virus. We have Jeremy, we have Tape Girl, and we have the player character. Now by the end of Security Breach, all 3 of them should have the Glitchtrap virus removed. Jeremy cuts his own face off to literally cut Glitchtrap out of his head. Vanessa being Tape Girl means that we have to play through Security Breach in order to remove Glitchtrap. And the player character would have to be Gregory. Now, because of the therapy CDs, I think that we could say Gregory gets taken over by Glitchtrap. And in order to do that, that means that Gregory has to play Help Wanted. So, Gregory plays Help Wanted and gets taken controlled by Glitchtrap. Hey, so I just realized that I put Gregory getting taken over by Glitchtrap on the wrong spot in the timeline. It should be going right before the full release of Help Wanted, because like I said earlier, it doesn't exactly make sense for Glitchtrap to make it to the full release. That, and we see evidence of somebody living throughout the Pizzaplex while we play Security Breach, so it makes sense for that person to be Gregory. And as much as I really want to say that Jeremy is Cassie's father, I just don't think that they can be the same character on this timeline. Now here's the thing. In a normal timeline that's not using just the Steel Wool games, I believe that Cassie's dad is Jeremy. But the reason that I don't think that we can put it confidently on this timeline is because the way that we get to that in a regular timeline has some evidence pieces that we don't have here. Now, the connection between Cassie's father and Jeremy in a normal timeline looks something like this. Cassie's father is the one that we play as in Help Wanted 2. In that game, Cassie's father finds a Bonnie mask, which represents that he was a friend of Michael's, specifically the Bonnie bully back in '83. Now that means that because he was friends with Michael, he could help Michael in things like, I don't know, working at Fazbear whenever he couldn't. So he is the one that we play in FNAF 2, named Jeremy Fitzgerald. And because they have the same name, Jeremy Fitzgerald and Jeremy from Help Wanted 1 could be the same character. But because we're only using Steel Wool games here, we don't have any of the connections between Cassie's dad and Jeremy. Cassie's dad can't be the Bonnie bully because the Bonnie bully isn't in the Steel Wool games, let alone Michael. Michael's not in the Steel Wool games either. So because they're not characters in the games, Cassie's dad can't be friends with Michael and help him in FNAF 2. We also don't get the FNAF 2 protagonist's name, so we can't say that Cassie's dad is named Jeremy. So we can't connect Cassie's dad to Jeremy at all. So the Bonnie mask in Help Wanted 2 just has no significance on this timeline? Not exactly. Actually, I think it does point towards something else. Now that Glitchtrap has added Gregory as another follower of his, I think this is the point where Glitchtrap starts testing his followers by giving them tasks. And one of those tasks is to kill Glamrock Bonnie. Now, even though Steel Wool is trying to point the finger at Monty and make everyone think that he was the killer, I don't think he did it. I think the one who killed Monty was Cassie's father. And if you want to see more why, I'm not going to go over that too much here because I've already made a video on it. So just go check out that video if you're really interested. Now, we know for sure that Bonnie's death needs to occur before this point in the timeline because that's the point where all the other employees other than Vanessa die. There needs to be other employees in the Pizzaplex doing maintenance to the animatronics. And this point right here is the all-staff meeting, the point where Vanessa kills all the other employees in the Pizzaplex. Now, how exactly can Vanessa get rid of all the other employees in the Pizzaplex without anyone realizing? Well, it's really simple. Fazbear was also trying to get rid of the employees. Not in the same way that Vanessa was. Vanessa was trying to kill them. Fazbear just wanted to fire them all. They wanted to replace all the employees with staff bots. Now, whether or not this meeting was planned from the very start by Vanessa in order to kill all the other employees, or it was planned by Fazbear and Vanessa just used this as the opportunity to kill them, is up for debate. But we do know for a fact that the all-staff meeting happens, and this is where all the other employees are killed off. That means that we move into our next point in the timeline, the beginning of Help Wanted 2. Now, I have this point here because it seems like that we need to be playing some of the games in Help Wanted 2 before the events of Security Breach. Moving along to the next points in our timeline, we have Gregory breaking free from Glitchtrap's control, followed by the events of Security Breach that lead up to Princess Quest. Now, I think it's the Princess Quest ending because whenever we play in Ruin, Cassie only finds comic strips of the other endings in Security Breach. The only one that she doesn't find a picture of is Princess Quest. And then out of nowhere on this timeline, the Pizzaplex is just hit with an earthquake. I really don't know where this came from. I know it says it in the newspapers in Ruin that it got hit with an earthquake, but like, why? Like, it just makes things a little bit more confusing. And that leads us into our final point in this timeline. The ending of Help 1 and 2, followed by the beginning of Ruin. Now, Cassie fixes some of the animatronics in Ruin, which could be really important in the future. For instance, she fixes Sun and Moon in order to get Eclipse back. She somewhat fixes Chica and Roxy, so Chica has her voice box back and Roxy isn't looking for Gregory anymore. But Monty and Freddy are too far gone and she can't fix them. Now, by the end of Ruin, Cassie meets one additional animatronic, one that we haven't met up to this point, the Mimic. Now, while we're playing Ruin, we're getting beckoned down deeper and deeper into the Pizzaplex in order to find Gregory. But by the end, we find out that it's not Gregory. It's an animatronic called the Mimic that apparently knows how to hear other people's voices and mimic them. But for some reason, this animatronic likes to play dress up. Because you see, in one of the endings, you get chased by the Mimic, but not just in its regular animatronic form. It's wearing what looks like a mascot costume. Now we get the information that the Mimic can wear any animatronic casing that it wants from the books. But it's sort of implied in the games through this mascot that it could just wear any costume that it wants. Meaning that we have a character that can sound and look like any other animatronic at this point. But then we hear from Gregory at the end of Ruin, and he tells us that the Mimic has been around for a really long time. Thanks, Gregory. That's really specific. But now we have an animatronic that can both look and sound like any other animatronic that it wants. And we don't know when it came from. So it could have come from the beginning of the timeline, or it could have come from like 2 weeks ago. Because Gregory is not specific of when it came from. And with that, I think that I have explained the entire timeline. Oh, but before I end this video, we need to talk about one more thing. We already talked about Jeremy, and we already talked about Tape Girl. It's now time to talk about these motherboards. Now, I wasn't entirely honest with you earlier. I told you earlier that the motherboards were plugged into the game in order to get the movement algorithms from the old animatronics. Which is correct, yes. But I didn't tell you the other part. Which is that when the motherboards got plugged into the game, they started rewriting the code that the programmers had already put into the game. Now, it's already been said hundreds of times that Glitchtrap and the Mimic are connected somehow because they're both evil AI algorithms, and I'm not going to continue beating a dead horse. But have you ever thought of where those motherboards came from that had Glitchtrap on them? Now, the Mimic is a fully functioning animatronic that is highly dangerous to people, meaning that it's highly unlikely that anyone stole a motherboard from the Mimic animatronic. But the Mimic program had to come from somewhere. Fazbear Entertainment had that motherboard, and it presumably came from an animatronic, meaning that an animatronic was running off of the Mimic program. I mean, hell, you might even be able to say that all the animatronics were running off of the Mimic program, but only one of them had a corrupted version. I mean, we do hear from Phone Guy in FNAF 1 and FNAF 2 that they just have bad programming, and that's why you're getting hunted at night. But if all the animatronics are running off of the Mimic program, there's a chance that none of them are actually haunted in the Steel Wool games. But with that, I'm going to leave this video here. I know I didn't really answer where the Glitchtrap virus came from, but I want to save that for another video because that's a really big topic to go over. And to be honest, it's probably going to need more than just the Steel Wool games in order to answer. And hey, if you made it this far, thanks for making it to the very end. Don't forget to like the video, comment what you liked about it, and subscribe to see more of my content in the future. And I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye!